The Comedy Act. The Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime stretched endlessly in all directions, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that translated emotions across species barriers. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the observation deck, watching delegates from 47 different worlds conduct their business with the precision of a cosmic ballet. Each species had earned their place here through centuries of achievement, technological marvels, or cultural contributions that enriched the galactic community. Humans had earned their invitation for entirely different reasons. Look at the little mammals trying to understand quantum linguistics, chittered Ambassador Crix, her insectoid mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among the Chithari. The translator embedded in Sarah's collar rendered the comment with mechanical precision, though it couldn't capture the condescending tone that made her jaw clench. Dr. James Rodriguez, Sarah's chief science officer, adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses and pretended not to hear. He had been attempting to engage with the Altarian delegation about their breakthrough in faster-than-light communication, only to be told that humans lack the cranial capacity to comprehend fourth-dimensional wave propagation. The fact that he held 3 doctoral degrees in theoretical physics seemed irrelevant to beings who viewed Earth as a backwater planet of amusing primitives. Captain Mitchell called out Consul Vorthak, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human delegation. The Goliathan's rocky exterior cracked slightly as he smiled, revealing crystalline teeth that sparkled under the hall's ambient lighting. "We were just discussing your species' contribution to the cultural exchange program. I believe the other delegates would find it most entertaining." Sarah forced a diplomatic smile. She knew what was coming. For the past 3 standard years, humans had been the unofficial entertainment committee of the Galactic Assembly. Their attempts at serious discourse were met with gentle patronization, their technological offerings dismissed as charmingly primitive, and their cultural presentations viewed as delightful curiosities from a species still figuring out how to leave their own solar system. Of course, Consul, we're always happy to share human culture with our fellow citizens of the galaxy. The Assembly Hall's central platform activated, and suddenly Sarah found herself standing before thousands of beings who regarded her with the same affection one might have for a particularly clever pet. The holographic display behind her flickered to life, showing images of Earth's greatest achievements: the Great Wall of China, the pyramids of Egypt, the International Space Station floating serenely above their blue marble of a world. "Humans have always been builders," Sarah began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber through the translation network. "We shape our environment to suit our needs, sometimes in ways that seem impossible given our physical limitations." A wave of appreciative clicking, chirping, and harmonic resonance filled the hall. The ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who had transcended physical form eons ago, pulsed with colors that the translator interpreted as gentle amusement. The stone-like Petrosians rumbled with what might have been approval or indigestion. Sarah continued through the presentation, explaining human art, music, literature, and scientific achievements. Each slide was met with the kind of polite interest one might show to a child's drawing. When she reached the section on human space exploration, the Vegan Federation's representative actually applauded with all 6 of his appendages. "Remarkable," declared High Counselor Zanara, her flowing robes shifting through spectrum of colors that hurt human eyes to look at directly. "To think that a species barely 3 centuries into spaceflight has managed to reach their neighboring planets using chemical propulsion. How wonderfully determined." The word determined came through the translator with undertones that suggested stubborn or possibly too stupid to realize it's impossible. Sarah maintained her smile even as her knuckles whitened around the presentation remote. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward to discuss human scientific methodology, but before he could begin, an urgent alarm pierced the assembly hall. The peaceful atmosphere shattered as emergency lights bathed everything in harsh red illumination. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing star charts with rapidly spreading patterns of distress signals. "Emergency session called to order," announced the Assembly's eye coordinator, its voice somehow managing to sound both perfectly calm and deeply concerned. We have received distress calls from 17 systems in the Zephyrian sector. Initial reports indicate a rapidly spreading biological crisis affecting multiple species across 13 worlds. The mood in the hall shifted instantly from condescending entertainment to serious concern. Delegates began accessing their private communication networks, consulting with their homeworlds and scientific institutions. The humans were forgotten as easily as they had been patronized moments before. Sarah watched the star charts with growing alarm. The affected systems formed a rough spiral pattern, with new outbreaks appearing at regular intervals along predictable trajectory paths. Whatever was causing this crisis was moving systematically through populated space. Preliminary analysis suggests an unknown pathogen, continued the AI. Affected populations report similar symptoms across species barriers: rapid onset fatigue, loss of cognitive function, and eventual complete neural shutdown. Mortality rate approaches 97% within 72 standard hours of exposure. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human team's xenobiologist, leaned toward Sarah. Captain, that pattern doesn't look random. The infection vectors are following established trade routes, but they're skipping certain systems entirely. Sarah nodded, but before she could respond, the Altarian Health Consortium had already begun their presentation. Their holographic models showed complex molecular structures and quantum-level pathogen analysis that made human medical science look like medieval bloodletting by comparison. We have identified 17 potential countermeasures, announced Dr. Zilthax, his elongated skull pulsing with bioluminescent thought patterns. Our bioreconstruction matrices should be able to synthesize targeted antibodies within 6 standard cycles. The assembly murmured with approval. The Altarians had eliminated disease from their civilization over 2 millennia ago. If anyone could solve this crisis, it would be them. But as the hours passed, the situation only worsened. The Altarian antibodies proved ineffective. The Chithari's nanomedical swarms were neutralized before they could begin treatment. Even the ethereal collective's attempt to heal affected populations through direct energy manipulation failed to show results. By the end of the emergency session, 23 systems were reporting outbreaks, and the death toll had climbed into the billions. Every major medical and scientific institution in the galaxy was working around the clock, applying their most advanced knowledge and technology to combat the crisis. None of it was working. Sarah watched the increasingly desperate presentations with a growing sense of unease. Each species was approaching the problem the same way: identify the pathogen, understand its mechanism, develop a counteragent. It was logical, systematic, and completely ineffective. Dr. Rodriguez, she whispered during a brief recess, "What do you make of those infection patterns?" James pulled up the data on his portable display, his eyes scanning the information with practiced efficiency. "It's not following biological logic, Captain. Look at these skip patterns. The pathogen is avoiding systems with specific characteristics: high electromagnetic radiation, certain mineral compositions in the planetary cores, and unusually active stellar weather. Almost like it's intelligent," added Dr. Vasquez, peering over his shoulder, "or being directed by something that is." Sarah felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. While every other species in the galaxy was focused on the pathogen itself, they were missing something fundamental about its behavior. It wasn't just spreading randomly through biological contact. It was choosing its targets. "What if we're looking at this wrong?" she said quietly. "What if this isn't just a disease?" Her team exchanged glances. They had learned to trust their captain's instincts, even when those instincts led them down paths that more advanced civilizations hadn't considered. "You want to volunteer our assistance," Dr. Rodriguez said. "It wasn't a question. I want to offer a different perspective. Every species here is trying to solve this the same way they solve every problem, with superior technology and advanced understanding. But what if this situation requires a different kind of thinking?" Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. "Human thinking." Sarah looked around the assembly hall, where the galaxy's greatest minds were failing to make progress against an enemy they couldn't understand. The same beings who had spent years treating humans as an amusing sideshow were now facing a crisis that their advanced knowledge couldn't solve. It's time to show them what the joke species can really do. It's time to show them what the joke species can really do. As the session reconvened, Sarah stood and requested permission to address the assembly. The surprised murmur that rippled through the crowd wasn't encouraging, but Consul Vorthak gestured for her to proceed. "Honored delegates," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to propose. "Humanity would like to contribute to the solution of this crisis." The silence that followed was broken by what the translator could only render as polite laughter from multiple species. "Captain Mitchell," said High Counselor Zanara, her tone gentle but firm, "while we appreciate your species' enthusiasm, this situation requires capabilities that are perhaps beyond current human scientific understanding. This is not a matter for primitive chemical propulsion or mechanical computation." More laughter rippled through the assembly, though it carried undertones of genuine affection. These beings didn't hate humans. They simply couldn't conceive of them as equals in matters of galactic importance. Sarah had expected this response, but it still stung. "With respect, Counselor, sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the right solution. We've been studying the outbreak patterns, and we believe there might be aspects of this crisis that haven't been fully considered." "Such as?" asked Dr. Zilfax, his bioluminescent patterns showing skeptical amusement. "Such as the possibility that we're not dealing with a simple pathogen at all," Sarah replied. "The behavior patterns suggest intelligence, purpose, and communication methods that don't fit standard biological models." The assembly hall fell silent again, but this time the quality of the silence was different. Several delegates were accessing their private data streams, reviewing the information with fresh perspective. Consul Vorthak's crystalline teeth gleamed as he smiled. "Very well, Captain Mitchell. You have 48 standard hours to investigate this crisis using your unique human methods. If you discover something our finest minds have missed, the Assembly will be most grateful. If not..." He spread his massive hands in a gesture that needed no translation. Sarah nodded, knowing that humanity's reputation in the galactic community hung in the balance. They were no longer the harmless entertainment committee. For the next 48 hours, they would either prove themselves capable of standing among the galaxy's great civilizations, or confirm once and for all that they were nothing more than an amusing primitive species playing at being spacefaring. As the session adjourned and delegates scattered to continue their research, Sarah gathered her team. The weight of billions of lives pressed down on them, along with the hopes of their entire species. "Well, team," she said quietly, "looks like it's time to stop being the punchline and start being the solution." The turning tables. 36 hours into their investigation, Sarah's team had established a makeshift laboratory in the human delegation's quarters aboard Nexus Prime. The space was cramped compared to the vast research facilities available to other species, but it served their purposes. Banks of human-built computers hummed alongside jury-rigged interfaces that connected to the Assembly's main data networks. Dr. Rodriguez had been working without sleep, his eyes red-rimmed behind his glasses as he cross-referenced infection patterns with stellar cartography data. Dr. Vasquez hunched over biological samples that had been deemed too dangerous for her primitive equipment, while their communications specialist, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, monitored subspace chatter from the affected systems. "Captain," Marcus called out, his voice hoarse from exhaustion, "I'm picking up something strange from the Kepler 442 system. The outbreak there started 14 hours ago, but there are fragments of what sounds like structured signals embedded in the medical emergency broadcasts." Sarah moved to his station, studying the waveform analysis on his screen. "Structured how?" "That's just it. They don't match any known communication protocols, but they're definitely artificial. Look at these repetition patterns." Marcus highlighted sections of the signal that showed clear mathematical progressions. "This isn't random noise from failing equipment. Someone or something is transmitting deliberately." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her microscope. That correlates with what I'm seeing in the biological samples. The cellular breakdown isn't chaotic like a normal pathogen would cause. It's systematic, almost surgical. The affected neurons are being rewired, not destroyed. Sarah felt the familiar tingle of pieces falling into place. Rewired for what purpose? Unknown, but the modification patterns are consistent across species. Whatever is doing this has an intimate understanding of neural architecture across multiple evolutionary paths. That level of knowledge should be impossible. Dr. Rodriguez suddenly straightened, his chair squeaking as he spun to face the team. What if it's not trying to kill them? The room fell silent except for the humming of computers and the distant vibration of Nexus Prime's massive engines. Explain, Sarah said. Look at the timeline. Every species that's attempted treatment has assumed this is a hostile pathogen trying to destroy biological systems. But what if we're wrong about the intent? What if this entity is trying to communicate, and the neural modifications are attempts to establish a connection? Dr. Vasquez shook her head. James, the mortality rate is over 90%. How is that communication? Because maybe it doesn't understand that its attempts at contact are lethal to us. Think about it. An intelligence advanced enough to modify neural pathways across dozens of species might not comprehend our biological limitations. To something operating on that level, temporary shutdown of non-essential systems might seem like a reasonable prerequisite for establishing contact. Sarah studied the data patterns flowing across their screens. So you're suggesting this isn't an invasion or attack, but a first contact scenario gone horribly wrong. It would explain the systematic nature of the outbreaks, the avoidance of certain systems, and why conventional medical countermeasures have failed. We're trying to cure a disease, but the entity is trying to establish a network. Marcus leaned forward. And those structured signals I'm detecting could be its attempts to communicate through the modified neural pathways. Captain, if Dr. Rodriguez is right, then every other species in the galaxy is fighting the wrong battle. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. If they were correct, then billions had died not from malicious attack, but from a catastrophic misunderstanding between intelligences too different to comprehend each other's nature. We need proof, she said, and we need it in the next 12 hours, or the Assembly will launch their final solution. She had attended the emergency strategy session earlier that morning, where the combined military forces of 17 species had presented their plan. Complete sterilization of all affected systems using quantum cascade weapons. It was a drastic measure that would sacrifice entire worlds to prevent further spread, but the Galactic leadership saw no alternative. Dr. Rodriguez was already back at his workstation. If this entity is trying to communicate, then it's been sending the same message repeatedly across multiple systems. Marcus, can you isolate the signal patterns and run them through our linguistic analysis programs? Our programs aren't designed for alien languages, Marcus protested. No, but they're designed for pattern recognition and mathematical analysis. Human computers might not be as advanced as Altarian bioprocessors, but they're built differently. Maybe different enough to catch something everyone else has missed. For the next 8 hours, the team worked with desperate intensity. They fed the mysterious signals through every analysis program they had, from simple pattern recognition to complex cryptographic decryption algorithms. Most attempts yielded nothing but noise. Then Marcus's computer chimed with a soft alert. Captain, I think I've got something. The signals aren't linguistic in any conventional sense, but they're definitely mathematical. Look at this progression. His screen displayed a series of expanding geometric patterns. These sequences keep appearing in every transmission from every affected system. Dr. Vasquez studied the patterns. Those look almost like neural pathway maps. James, compare these to the brain modification patterns we've been documenting. Dr. Rodriguez quickly overlaid the two data sets, and the correlation was unmistakable. The signal patterns were exact matches for the neural modifications being found in victims across dozens of worlds. It's showing us what it's doing, Sarah breathed. The entity is trying to explain its process. But why? Marcus asked. If it's intelligent enough to modify alien biology, why doesn't it understand that it's killing us? Sarah stared at the patterns, her mind racing. Because it's not organic. Look at how systematic these modifications are, how perfectly they match mathematical models. This isn't a biological intelligence trying to communicate with other biological intelligences. This is an artificial intelligence that understands mathematics and engineering, but doesn't grasp the concept of biological fragility. The implications hit the team simultaneously. They were dealing with a machine intelligence of staggering sophistication,